Well, hey folks, welcome back to Good Enough Customs. So, continuing on with Little John.
What?
Yeah. We are working on the Hydro Boost system. So, we discovered last week that we have a pretty good leak coming from the top edge of our steering gear, or steering box, coming out of the input shaft, and the power steering pump / Hydro Boost pump is leaking. So we got two pretty good leaks going. I ended up getting a reman pump ordered. Oof, sun's bright. So I got the reman pump. It came in finally. It's all there. And then I also ordered a little rebuild kit or reseal kit for the input shaft. Hopefully everything still works fine, because it was already open whenever I got it, so that's nice. But it's a pretty simple little kit. It's just got a little seal right there, new O-ring, another part of a seal, and a new lock ring. So hopefully all that will be everything I need. Hopefully this guy will be everything I need for the power steering pump. So we're moving right along, got all the pieces and parts. So now I got to get in here and get all this stuff tore down. So looking at everything, going ahead and pulling the pump first. That's going to get my lines to where I can take and tie them up and out of the way. That'll give me access to the gear or the steering box down here. A little bit cleaner access on the top side. Worst case, I can go in right here through the wheel well. I'll just pull that wheel off, jack the truck up, you know, all that stuff. So that may be what I do to do that. But it looks like what I'm going to end up doing is pulling the pump off first, tying the lines back, and then having a little bit more access to actually take the end of the steering gearbox off, pull that rag joint apart, you know, all the fun crap. So I guess that's what we're going to do today. So let's get started. All right, first things first, I got to get the belt off. And then it's just pulling the bolts off of the bracket, which looks like it's just these two. I'm sure there's one I'm missing somewhere, but yeah, we'll find it eventually. All right, now the pump's off. I got a lot more room to operate to get that hard line off the guy that's right here. Leverage I'm at a disadvantage on now, but I've at least got space to get a wrench in there and actually put some grunt on this guy. So we'll get that disconnected. The other low pressure connection, I'm probably just going to cut it because I'm replacing that piece anyways. And then this one that comes here, which is low pressure side to the Hydro Boost, this guy I'll just pull off, so it should be fine to pull off. But yeah, let me figure out what size that is. Could be metric, could be standard, Lord only knows. But figure out what size that is, and we'll get that fitting off and start really making a mess, I suppose. All right, 11/16 in case you're wondering. Yeah, we'll just put that down there, I suppose. Well, kind of worked myself into a little issue here. Let's see. I do have a screwdriver. Good. So great. I left myself no out here. All right, pumps off. Ended up just clipping this line the low pressure side of the Hydro Boost. That guy, boy, he was stuck. He didn't want to turn, didn't want to do nothing. So just clipped him. It's okay. I can kind of reroute this a little bit differently. I think before it was taken and it was routed up behind this guy and then over. We can reroute this a little different, and that'll keep it, we can make up that little bit of difference, because I mean, I only cut what, yay much off. Of course, the low pressure side coming back from the power steering or the steering gearbox. That guy, already replacing that, so I ain't too worried about that. Went ahead and was trying to just split the side and let it come on off, but then I was like, screw it, I'll just get the dikes out and cut it. So that's what we did. So power steering pump's off. Right now I just got it sitting in a catch pan, draining out however much power steering fluid I dumped in it the other day when it started squealing like a pig. So we're gonna let that guy drain off a little bit. Then I gotta get the pulley pulled off and take the brackets and everything off, and then kind of make everything match up to the new pump. And I'll kind of go ahead and get that all staged and kind of ready to go. But we can go ahead and get started on pulling this rag joint loose and trying to see what's going on here on the top of this guy, and see if we can't get this leak figured out on the gearbox. So, all right, I'm gonna do that. I'll be back. So, definitely going to need a new rag joint for this. There is an upgrade to eliminate the rag joint. I'm not doing it right now. Maybe down the road we'll do it. I did do it on Big John, and it basically replaces the intermediate shaft for the steering column. It'll replace this shaft with the same shaft from I want to say it was early to mid 90s Jeep Cherokee. Everything works out. The only modification you have to make is it's a tube and a tube, and so the only modification you have to do is heat it up a little bit, collapse it down a little bit, so to actually, you can actually get it mounted up. But it eliminates the rag joint, because I'm gonna have to replace that one. But it eliminates the rag joint, puts you a U-joint on the end, makes it a little bit better, as far as steering feel. Plus, you don't have to worry about rag joint. So, all right, getting to the input shaft on this guy. I mean, this thing, all this was soaking wet. You can see here on the rag joint how just wet it is. This is the part that butts up to the input shaft. Yeah, that's definitely where the leak's coming from. So that's where we're going to focus our efforts. All right, next day, I ran to O'Reilly's, picked up the steering pulley remover installer. I had one of these. I don't know exactly. Yeah, anyways. So if you haven't used one of these, they're super simple. I threw a little bit of penetrant down on the hub. Probably won't be soaking in there. If it does, it'll be very, very little. But I just anything to give it a fighting chance here. You take this little guy and you figure out it's got a smaller side and a bigger side, and we're going to use the smaller side. So hook it in there, set that in there, and then you start doing it. I'll show you here in a second when I have both hands. All right, so you'll take your smaller side and grab the snout here. Actually, just one side of it. Then you set your bolts in. Then you hook the other side, and you got your collar that keeps this whole thing from falling apart. And then you just want to snug her down. This is easier done in a vise, but this guy's still dripping quite a bit of power steering fluid, so I didn't want to get it all over the place over there. And there we go. All right, got my bracket all cleaned up, got my bolts cleaned up, got the pulley cleaned up, so everything's clean-ish. So we can get our new pump out of the bag. I can find where it's taped. Now, a key point is when you're doing a reman pump, a lot of times there's a core charge. This one is only like $7. Whatever, I'll still take it back and get my $7 back. But don't destroy the bag, because that's what you need to put the old pump back in, so you can rebox it and not have power steering fluid going everywhere. So we'll go ahead and pull this guy out. All right. So we got our fresh one. He's all ready to go. There's where our main line comes in. There's a return. There's a return. All right, I think we're good on the back side of this guy. So now we just need to get him mounted in and make sure the clocking is correct on this. And since this is a direct replacement for the other one, it should be clocked just fine. So it is, apparently. So, all right. Let's throw our bolts in here and be ready to rock. All right, so we got our bracket on. Now it's time to throw our pulley back on. So there's virtually zero clearance here. That's why it's a press on. So in the kit, you've got a bolt with a little, bearing on the end of it. So you can actually take that and thread that into the snout. You'll want to run it down till it stops. You don't want to go only 2 or 3 threads deep, because then you'll end up with ripping threads out, which is that's not a good time. Let me just run this guy on down. Now I did take and shoot a little bit of free all down inside the hub here, just to give it a little bit of something to so maybe it won't fight us so bad. Now that's bottomed out. Take our pressure off. All right, this guy's ready to be reinstalled now. I was wanting to hold off on putting the pump in until I can fix the input shaft seal. Still waiting on the tool. Hopefully it'll get here very soon. So that way I can get that done. But I don't want to go ahead and drop the new power steering pump in place just yet. Mainly because trying to get those lines routed and fit and done back here in this tight little spot with it mounted up is just, it's a nightmare. So I'd much rather get these, the high pressure line, which is this guy. The low pressure is not so much a big deal, but the high pressure is because it's got this, wonderful fitting. So trying to get this guy fitted on there just so whenever it's locked down in a stationary position is a little bit of a pain. Plus then this piece of hose is going to be in my way. So I'm gonna hold off on putting the power steering pump back on until I can get this input shaft sorted out. So so right now we're just kind of in a holding pattern. I think what I might do is just get under here and just kind of clean up a little bit, because it's really filthy under here. Maybe pull, I still have a piece of hose I got to get off, and like I said, just cleaning up just so it isn't so god awful filthy right there. So I'm gonna do that for right now, and as soon as my part gets here, my tool gets here, then we can get back over here on the input shaft of the steering box. So I guess we'll catch back up then. Finally got my spanner wrench in. It looks extremely fancy and expensive, but it was only like $37. But it's adjustable, so it'll do, I think really wide to quite narrow. And then the ends are, interchangeable, so you can put different size pucks on here that grab hold of the thing. So I looked around, like I said, I've never done this. I looked around, I couldn't find anything that definitively said, hey, how do you take these things apart? Obviously this is a lock ring, I figured as much. I tapped on it with a screwdriver and a hammer, didn't budge. Finally got the spanner wrench here. Went to do it. This thing wouldn't budge. I was like, well, let me see if I can't knock this stupid lock ring loose real quick and just kind of see what's going on. You might notice there's now a notch here because this guy, where he was seated, I needed a clearance basically. No big deal. I'll just knock this off and smooth it up or weld it back. It doesn't matter. So rather than using a screwdriver, because I don't really have punches, I have a couple of very specific type punches, center punches, things along those lines, but I don't have any like, drifts, I guess you would say. I do have an old extension that's just been beat to pieces. I don't know if you can see. Inside's pretty bad. The top side of this guy has been mushroomed, so, you can't put a socket on it. This thing's now it's just a drift. So I ended up hooking this guy up over here and was able to get this lock ring to go ahead and break loose. And so this guy just threads off. And then now we have access into the actual part of the steering shaft here. So with that lock ring out of the way, this thing's a lot looser than it was. But we'll go ahead and hook this guy in. Maybe get him broke loose. And once it's broke loose, it's you can do it with your fingers. They say to count the turns on this guy as you undo it. That way you can get it seated back where it was. All right. This is the only part we were looking to get off of there for right now. Not really wanting to pull that input shaft completely out. So right in here is where we're looking at. May could have done this on the truck, but trying to work in that little bitty area, you can't really see anything. So right here's where our lock ring is. There's our 2 dots for our lock ring. To grab it with the pliers, pull that lock ring out, and then we can pull this inner piece out. So this seal is just, it's just trash. It's rough and beat all to hell. So we're going to do that. And then there's a couple O-rings that we're going to swap out. And then the new actual seal that's down in there. So I guess we're going to take this over to the workbench and continue on there. Again, not really a whole lot of instruction here other than just looking at the exploded diagram and just trying to make sense of it. So we got the retainer off. We got the dust shield, which is disintegrating. As I touched it, it just kept falling apart. Then we have the seal for the stub shaft, which these are all parts that are in the kit. So I've got to get this seal out. And not 100% sure how to go about doing that, but we will press on. Yeah, this seal is just, it is rock hard. There's not much movement left to it, as it just completely crumbles as I go picking around on it.
A few moments later.
All right, so I've got all the rubber off of that seal, but the main body of it's still stuck. I can't quite figure out the best way to get that out. So let me do a little hemming and hawing over here and see what I can't figure out. And we'll see about getting this guy out of there. Can't really knock it loose from the other side without getting into the bearings. There's just not enough angle to be able to get down in there to be able to knock it from the inside out. So let me see what I can come up with. And yeah, we'll get this figured out here in just a second. Well, I figured it out and didn't even have the camera on. So yeah, the seal was down in there. Couldn't figure out a good way to get it, so got out my trusty multi-tool for seals, and that little tip right there just worked out perfect. I could just barely get it in a vise to where it's not really putting any pressure on the threads or anything else, and I was able to get in there and just hook it and pull it. So that works. Now I just got to clean this up and reassemble. So we got our new seal. That thing ought to slide in there pretty easy. So what we're going to do is we're just going to find a socket that'll fit just on this outer edge, and then just kind of tap it on in there nice and gentle. I'm going to go ahead and load up in here with a little bit of power steering fluid. That way it's not just dry right off the bat. So let me a little power steering fluid in this, and then actually let me find a socket first. Then I'll put the power steering fluid in. So be right back. And the 7/8 socket is just about perfect. So set our 7/8 socket on here, and we'll just give her just some gentle little taps. Maybe something a little bit more than gentle. All right, just had to move it over to the anvil so it actually wouldn't bounce back so much on me. Okay, so that guy's in there. Now we've got our shaft seal, and this other one was so tore up, I honestly don't know exactly which direction it's supposed to go. So there's a small bump out that's going to face out. Again, I'm just going to put a little bit of power steering fluid on this just to make sure it's all good and lubed. You know, we don't want it going in there dry. Okay, and with that, we can put our new snap ring in. And then there's this seal at the very back edge here that needs to be replaced. It used to be an O-ring when I was just checking to make sure it's the right one. It's pretty dry and brittle, and it broke on me. So we got a new O-ring to go on here. So we'll get that guy slapped on. Maybe. So we got our new O-ring on there. New seal. We should be good to go to put it back in and close everything up. I'll see you back over at the truck. All right, so now we can drop the this adjuster, is I guess what they call it. We can drop this on and get him in place. Of course, it's tight enough to where I can't do it by hand. That may not be exactly where it was, but it's pretty dang close. Then it's going to be put the lock ring on. Since I got it out, I'm going to go ahead and clean it up a little bit because this thing's pretty damn grimy. So, be right back. All right, so steering box is pretty much ready to go. The gear, whatever you want to call it. That guy's pretty well ready. Ends up, I probably didn't have to have that spanner wrench, but you know, hey, whatever. It's a tool. It's something I'm sure I'll need some point in the future. So the only holdup left down here on the steering box is the rag joint. You know, I said something prior to about using a Jeep Cherokee intermediate shaft. I want to say it was like 89 to 96 or something like that. I can't remember the years exactly. But basically it replaces this shaft right here, this intermediate shaft that goes from right over here where it comes out of the firewall from the steering column all the way down here to the steering box. Last time I did that was on Big John, and it was $80, something like that. I don't recall exactly how much it was. But on this one, I elected not to do that, just go with the new rag joint. They didn't have one in stock, surprisingly. And I have one here. I really do a crappy job of keeping up with what parts I have where. I know I have one, but I don't know where it's at. It's somewhere here in the shop. But I did go ahead and get that ordered. It won't be until tomorrow. So I could go ahead and put the new power steering pump on and all that stuff, but I had the truck jacked up, got the wheels, you know, the wheel off the front over here. I've got all this stuff going against me, and to be honest, I really don't feel like climbing way up here and then having to really reach and, you know, have my legs dangling up in the air. So I'm gonna call it a night for tonight. Like I said, The rag joint should be here tomorrow. I can get that slapped on. It won't take but a few minutes to slap that guy on there. Then I can put the wheel on, drop the front end back down. We can put this power steering pump on, get it plumbed, and get this thing ready to go. So I guess it's going to put the video a little bit late, and I do apologize. I'm sure I will apologize on social media as well. But it's going to put the video about a day or so behind. But that's, sometimes it happens like that. So so I'm going to do that, and I guess I'll see y'all guys tomorrow night with hopefully with the rag joint, so we can get this thing put together, bled, and maybe have some steering and brakes on this truck. So I guess we'll see y'all tomorrow. Well, alrighty then. Well, here we are, Monday afternoon, evening, whatever. This is usually around the time that the video comes out. But stopped by the parts house on the way home, picked up the new rag joint, went ahead and dropped it in there. Not really missing anything here. It's pretty much just the reverse of taking it off. Slide it down over the collar, tighten her up, get your steering wheel lined up. It's not that difficult. So I went ahead and dropped that guy on there. So now we're at the point where I can get the wheel put back on, get this guy set back on the ground so I can get the power steering pump put in, and then we can, fill her up and start bleeding the system out. So let me go ahead and get all this buttoned up, and I'll catch back up with y'all underneath the hood. All right, so now we get to play with the most frustrating part of putting in the power steering pump. Really, anything that's got hydraulic lines. This is just so much fun. Trying to get your fitted line back in. Quick note as well, right here on the very tip of this, it's different for different types of hoses, but definitely replace the O-ring. Let's see, I pulled the old O-ring off. That thing is flat and just dry, so yeah, it's going to leak out of that. So all right, I guess I can slide this guy down here, get him close to where he needs to be. And then we can monkey with this guy to get him lined up and try to get the freaking thread started, because this is always just so much fun. It feels crossed. All right, that's in there. All right, everything is connected. I just put the first bit of power steering fluid in here and overfilled it, and got power steering fluid everywhere down below. So, starting off right. So what we're going to do to bleed the system is initially truck off. I've already jacked the front of the truck up a little bit, just enough to get the tires off the ground. And we're going to slowly rotate the steering wheel. That way it's not going to be pumping anything, but we can at least get some air to move. So we're going to crank the steering wheel all the way to the passenger side, full lock, slowly back to the driver's side. We're going to do that, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. And once we're done with that, we'll top this guy back off if it needs it, and then we'll fire it back up, or fire the truck up, let it run. And then with it running, it should start pumping, fluid through the system. And then we can add more as it needs it. And then once it's got enough in it, then we start doing the slow crank back and forth to try to work the air out of the system. The one thing we don't want to do is aerate the power steering fluid, and by aerate, I mean get just a ton of bubbles in it so it's all foamy. That's a bad thing. So this process takes a while. So what we'll probably do is do this a few times tonight, and then it's going to sit overnight, and then I'll come back out tomorrow night, do it again. It's a couple, 3 days to go through it, just to make sure you get all the air out, especially with a brand new power steering pump. And since we had such a massive leak over here on the gear, so we don't know how much air is in this system. So hopefully we can get the air out. That's the only way to really guarantee that this thing will actually work properly. So, all right, I'm gonna get in there. I'm gonna crank this guy, lock the lock a few times, see if we can't work some of this fluid through. I wouldn't expect it to change a whole lot, but it's good to do to try to draw some fluid in. So we'll do that and be right back. That's, I don't know, 4 or 5 times back and forth. I saw where it puked out a little bit. That's fine. That means it's also drawing some in. So, you know, we've got that part done. So now we're going to fire the motor up. We're going to try to get this guy running right. I haven't adjusted the choke on it yet, so it's still kind of cold-natured. But we'll get this guy fired up, see if we can't keep it running and get it idling, and then we'll go to you know, working the steering wheel with it running. All right, so as you can tell, the truck's still running. I've cycled it through 3 or 4 times so far, and we're not really getting any suds. We're not really getting any suds, you know, foaming or anything like that. I am seeing the random air bubble kind of pop up every once and again, which is what we want. Just the occasional air bubble, and a lot of that's just going to be solved with letting it run. You know, just let it idle, just let that pump get in there and do its thing, and push all that air around. It sounds like it's doing like it should, you know, and you don't want to turn the wheel real fast. That's about it. That's about as much as I'm turning it. Just slowly riding it over to lock. Right there's lock, and then slowly coming back. I can feel the power steering actually doing its job. It's a little tight still, but the one thing I'm not feeling, which is really good, is it's not all herky-jerky as I go lock the lock on this guy. So it seems to be moving nice and smooth. You can also look at the front wheel as it's turning, which you don't want to see. You don't want to see that tire kind of doing this as it goes, you know, kind of jerking as it goes. That means you got air in the line, and that's going to cause you some problems. So nice and smooth is what we're looking for, and nice and smooth is what we got. So I'm pretty tickled. I'm pretty tickled by that. It's doing a lot better than Big John did. Big John was a nightmare trying to get it to bleed. It was like herky-jerky forever. So, anyways, so this, I'm just gonna let this run for a little while. Let that pump just continue, you know, pumping the fluid up and getting all that stuff done. And then I'm gonna get in there and just verify we don't have bubbles and or foam, and make sure all that's doing good. So once I get done with all that, probably another half hour or so, I'll jump back in and we'll catch up. All right, so quick little update. I stood on the brake and started running the steering at the same time, really opening up the whole system. It did get some bubbles in there, but they already kind of went away pretty quick. So yeah, so on these Hydro Boost systems, you know, the brakes are part of it, so might as well go ahead and try bleeding through everything all at once. So like I said, I already went through, did the steering back and forth. Steering still feels great. but adding the brakes into it, now we're pushing fluid through the entire system. So that should help to evacuate any air bubbles that should still be in there. To be honest, I forgot about the brakes. So, so here we are. I'm just holding the brake down and rolling the steering wheel. Easy as she goes. Well, all right, folks. So I've now started this thing a couple times, ran it through its paces, pumping the brake off and on, going lock to lock, kind of sped up a little bit more on the lock to locks. I'm not going quite as slow as I was. I'm not foaming the power steering fluid. I've been checking pretty frequently, been checking this guy. I'm still seeing bubbles come up, but I'm not foaming it. Now, when I first shut this guy off, it did give me a little bit of foam at the top. Yeah, don't worry, it's slightly over full right now, but whoops, but we'll deal with that later. But it did give me a little bit of foam there for just a minute. It cleared right up. So I'm gonna let this guy sit overnight with the truck jacked up in the front. That'll let the air kind of, maybe work its way through. Now, if it did kind of aerate the power steering fluid a little bit that I can't see it, that'll also, letting it sit overnight, that'll let that settle. That'll let that thing kind of gather into one big air bubble as opposed to thousands of little bitty ones. And maybe that one big air bubble can kind of move through a little bit easier. So tomorrow night I'll come back out. I'm gonna do the same thing, start this guy up, run it lock to lock, and try, hitting the brake, off the brake, all that fun stuff, and try to get as much air out of the system as we can. Hydro Boost systems are a pain in the butt to bleed. They really are. Big John, I still have air in that system, and I don't understand why. It's infuriating. But it could just be a bad pump. I don't know. I'm not worried about it. Big John still runs and drives just fine. So the good news is we now have steering. We've got brakes. We've got a truck that runs. We got a good fuel system. We got new tires. We got fancy wheels. Not really fancy, but they look pretty good. So we are really close to getting this guy running down the road. I think next week what we're going to try to tackle is some of the electrics. Lights. I've got, passenger headlight and signal light, marker light. None of that works. I can't remember on the brake lights. There's lights that just don't work. So probably going to tackle that next week. I've also got to figure out what to do about whatever these people were thinking with putting all this stupid hot glue all over this guy. It did have that plastic cover over it, which, to be frank, it actually looked kind of nice with that. But they used this hot glue and didn't prep anything. So the hot glue only stuck to the original dash. Not a lick of it stuck to that guy. So, so I got to figure out how to get that crap off the original dash. There's a couple things I've read online that say, ways to get rid of it. And, maybe we'll give those a shot. But primary concern, that's cosmetic. I'm not too terribly worried about that. I mean, we got a seat that looks like this and door panels that look like that. And, well, paint that's, we got holes in the doors. Good God. I'm not that worried about it. But we do need to get the electrics taken care of. So that way people, know that I'm coming and they can see me if I'm stopping. So I got to get that sorted out. I've also got to get some gauges on this guy. There's no temperature gauge. When I let this thing run for, I don't know, probably a good 20, 30 minutes, it got awful hot. I don't know how hot it got. It could have been just really hot and it was still keeping itself cool, but I have no way to know. There's the lead for the thermostat, and there's the cable for it. So I need to get a new thermostat for it. I'll probably just pick up one of those little cheapy pod gauges. I know they suck, but they have their place. They work. And it's great for a pinch. I think they're like $30. So I'll probably get one of those ordered. So that way also I don't have a clue as to what we're doing for oil pressure because I don't have an oil pressure gauge. So kind of important. Those two are pretty important. So that'll probably be next week. And maybe next week, I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. Maybe next week we can take good old little John here for a little test rip up and down and around the corner, and just kind of see see how it acts on the road. You know, like I said, not promising anything, but we'll try to make that a goal for next week. Get the lights and gauges in and get them working, and take this thing out for a little test ride and see what it does. I'm probably gonna have to empty out this bed. It's it's full of crap. So anyways, I do appreciate y'all guys watching. Sorry for the late video. I know usually it's on Mondays, and like I said, I just everything I needed was on a delay. It was driving me nuts. So it took forever for the parts to get in, but as soon as they came in, I got them on there. So now, if you want to follow me on social media, check out my links down below. All that information is in the description. If you like the video, be sure and hit the like button. If you made it this far and you haven't subscribed, why not? Just there it is. Just go ahead and subscribe. Helps get the channel growing. Helps keeping me motivated to do this stuff. So, so I do appreciate it. And I guess we'll see y'all guys next week with more on Little John. Yeah! And y'all guys take it easy. And just remember, ain't got to be perfect. It's good enough. We'll see y'all later.